In this video, we're going to be looking at the star players from both Chicago Machine and New York Pony and seeing what impact they had on the game. And who better to start with than the All-Too-World 2019 Men's Club Offensive Player of the Year, Joe White. Joe White had a little bit of a shaky start as he's engaged here as the reset and doesn't get free of Mike Drost, but he had a huge impact on the game overall, getting several scores and assists. His tall frame means he's a threat going deep, but he also has loads of great throws, as you can see with his early crossfield hammer to Howe. Johnny Bansfield rips it full length flick to him at 4-all. White makes the catch under a lot of pressure from Jeff Babbitt. One of Joe White's powerful but underrated moves is his inside throw and go backhand. Jack Hatchett takes a little step to the left and Joe White immediately steps forward, releases the throw as he's pivoting and is already on the move when the disc is in the air. In this example it clears the space a bit quicker so Evangelides and Howe can score, but we'll see it having more great effect later in the game. And here you can see it gives him some separation to work with right at the front of the end zone. He ends up clearing around the back and appears later on for the score in the front cone.
Needing a release. Paul Arders to Joe White.
He also plays excellent defense here, marking Spielman and forcing a miscommunication, chasing down the disc to make sure of it and colliding with Mike Drost, who was the one who shut him out briefly earlier. Moves the disc around the back very nicely with Howe, setting up this very clinical cut away from Ben Katz, but uses his arm to push off a bit more than Katz is happy with. Here we see the inside throw and go move giving him separation and making him a very dangerous threat in a very dangerous area. In the end he's able to translate this into a cut across the field, catching the disc just outside the end zone, putting him in a prime position to just throw into the end zone for the score.
Those strike cuts are the ones you have to take away, especially late in the stall count.
Again, the inside-out backhand throw and go move, setting him up for a deep cut which isn't thrown to. Catching it on the far side, seeing a deep cut develop and showing his throwing skill by putting up a long arching throw. This should have been completed, but there was a foul that was overruled by the observer. He wasn't on the field with Kurt Gibson very much, but when they were on the same line, they would connect to great effect. Here White shakes off Drost to get the score early on in the game, and let's turn our attention to Kurt Gibson now. He initiates flow in this last possession of the game.
Kurt Gibson knows what that feels like. So does Bo Kittredge.
A quick 1-2 off Joe White, and the disc continues to flow across the far side of the field, where Machine get their 15th point.
To the end zone. Chicago Machine has...
Quite early in the game, Gibson gets the disc and is annoyed with Keegan initiating contact when he has a free deep option to throw to. Here he is working the disc into the front of the end zone against Pony's poachy defense, and then doing a couple of give-go moves which enabled him to score at the front of the Pony end zone just before half-time.
Back of the stack, completely unguarded for the moment. And poaching those force and break side lanes, but not making a difference.
Straight after half, he rips it deep to the person we're going to talk about next, and that's number 5, Johnny Bansfield on Machine. He makes an incredible catch to Sky Chris Kosher, and then a sweet throw into the end zone for the score. I'm showing you every single touch he had of the disc. It's ridiculous how effective he was going away and towards. This sequence where he's passing back and forth with Kurt Gibson is complete break from the norm, and it's the only real touches of the disc he had which weren't catching hucks, throwing hucks, or getting pieces on layout Ds. After Kurt and Bansfield just hang out at the back, keeping the disc alive, waiting for holes to open in Pony's switchy defense, they call a timeout. Out of the timeout, Bansfield sets up in the stack, marked by Grant Lindsley, fakes under, goes deep, and Kurt just throws it the length of the field to him. Lindsley puts in a good bid, but such composure from Bansfield to reel that one in, and again a really nice throw at very short notice to make sure of the score. We see him keeping his eyes on the disc as he's juggling it.
The pressure, surviving the ground contact.
At 4-4, he ignores the open pass and just boosts it deep to Kurt Gibson and Joe White, a power play that gets Machine pumped up.
And it's Joe White. Tough. Like Kurt Gibson.
At 6-5, he touches the disc for the second time, and what did he do? He immediately sends it deep to Nathan Goff, who runs it down for the score.
This disc is going to float in Nate.
Marking Chris Kosher here, he takes the physical contact and puts in a great layout deep bid, getting a piece on the disc, but Kosher able to reel it in. The stall gets quite high, and then Kosher throws to the next player we're going to focus on, which is New York Pony's Jimmy Mickle. Mickle had 3 turns in this game, but as always had a lot of touches around the disc for Pony. In this one, he throws to Sean Keegan, and the Chicago defense have pushed the throw a bit wide, meaning that Sean Keegan, despite his best efforts, isn't able to reel it in. Quite early on in the game, his deep huck to Grant Lindsley is defended by Ross Barker. And at 4-4, he turns over for the second time, this time an unforced error on an inside-out flick break. The next point, he has to face great defense from Jeffrey Weiss, who marks him out for quite a long time whilst he's spending quite a lot of energy. Chris got just lucky in the end because Ben Yotz got free on the break side, but this could have easily led to a turnover.
Weiss on Mickle.
Again, we see Chris Kocher with the disc and Mickle struggling to get separation on his cuts. This time Nathan Goff puts in a good bid, but Mickle makes an amazing catch and immediately gets up to keep the disc moving.
Mickle able to make the catch. Nate Goff bidding.
He throws really nicely to Sam Little here, who's able to milk the disc into the end zone for the score towards the end of the game. But here's another turnover he was involved in at 7-5, where Harper Garvey throws a disc a bit too high. Harper also didn't have a particularly good game. Lots of good stuff tends to happen when he gets the disc in his hands around the back, but in this game he threw a couple of turnovers. One painful one to a very freed Thorne, who, if that had been complete, it would have been 4-2 to PoNY. He had a really nice hammer, which opened up a score soon after here to Jeff Babbitt. And the very first point of the game, he had an absolutely money huck to Ben Yott, being chased down by Kurt Gibson, but catches it just in the back corner of the end zone. Ben Yott was quite quiet in this game. He struggled a bit with the switching and poaching that the machine were doing at the back. Here he is taking advantage of no mark being on a thrower and a face-marking defender for a score. And Sean Keegan here makes a scoreable throw into the end zone, but Yott just goes up and it bounces out of his hand. Sean Keegan was able to make use of his great field awareness to find the holes in Machine's defense.
Kocher again, laser.
And is able to use his agility in tight spaces at the front of the end zone.
Keegan.
He gets a ton of touches and moves the disc around for PoNY. You can see him here getting annoyed at some contact from a defender just after half, and showing his versatility in throwing by finding the open space in the Chicago defense with a little knife over the top. When the holes would appear in Machine's defense, then you could trust Keegan to find them. Here he hits Sam Little, who we're going to look at next. You can see Sam starts off this move with a crossfield hammer, burns straight down the near sideline, and is screamingly free in the end, even though the Machine defenders realised a bit too late.
Relatively uncontested, and then Keegan with it.
Here's Little chasing down a lateral pass and then ripping one of those crossfield hammers for New York's second point in the game.
Crossfield hammer. Hatchet to Jimmy.
Milking this throw from Jimmy Mickle into the end zone like we saw earlier. And then another perfect crossfield hammer for PoNY's 10th score.
Forces the crossfield hammer, but that's going to work.
Another absolute workhorse on the PoNY team, Grant Lindsley, throwing a huck to Chris Kocher under a ton of pressure here.
Coverage. Chris Kocher makes this.
Going deep for Mickle, but getting defended by Ross Barker.
Ross Barker defending. And Barker.
Something Lindsley's really good at is something I call puppet mastering, which is where you're able to control all the movements of the defenders whilst the disc is in your hand and open up the space that you want to throw to. You see him doing it here to throw to Sean Keegan at the front of the end zone, overshooting a long throw to Kocher before half time,
Kocher can't get there.
And then puppet mastering again for a score to Jeff Babbitt at the start of the second half.
Good offensive possession for PoNY.
When matched up against Johnny Bansfield, he puts in a good bid on this huck, but that's the one that Bansfield reels in after a juggle. And finally, let's look at Yidding Howe on Machine with 2 goals and 1 assist. This one catching a hammer from Joe White.
Yidding Howe is there.
Moving the disc with Evangelides to score at the front of the end zone, making it 6-5.
And right back.
Defense just hemorrhaging yards.
He works it laterally across the field with White, and this score that was disallowed.
Looking for White, end zone.
And you get a hint of what he's capable of here as he hits Janas out of the corner of his eye with an offhand backhand through the middle of the PoNY D. The PoNY roster is full of stars, but the Machine defense managed to smother them somewhat, taking away the opportunity to make big plays, meaning none of PoNY really had a great game. Whereas on Machine, Joe White was consistently performing, and when he was asked to make the big plays, he did. Bansfield only made the big plays, and behind them, they had Kurt Gibson, who was doing what Kurt Gibson does. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you again soon.
Bansfield, the former High Five import, just bolstering the strength of this Chicago Machine D-line, and they are executing at such a high level